Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Anything Joe's. My name is Greg Engel.
And I'm Jaren Decker.
Today we're at the Hilton Garden Inn here in Louisville, Kentucky for the Kentuckiana's Winterfest II, the second year gathering of the smaller G.I. Joe exposition. So let's head inside and take a look at what our dealers have to offer us. Hello everyone and welcome back to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe. My name is Greg Engel.
And I'm Jaren Decker.
And we'll be your host today. Today on Anything Joe's, we're going to recap the experience and acquisitions of Winterfest II, a small G.I. Joe convention held in Louisville, Kentucky at the Hilton Garden Inn. We've attended both Winterfest up to this point, and I definitely think it's one of those conventions that I'm starting to look more and more forward to as we attend them. Unlike Kentuckiana, Winterfest is a much more scaled down show. It only uses one of the three rooms that Kentuckiana uses. It's exclusively vendor focused, so you'll only find dealers there. And even though, just like Kentuckiana, it does lean heavily into the 12-inch side as active 3 3/4 collectors, Jaren and I almost always are able to find stuff there that piques our interest. What do you think the divide is between 12-inch and 3 3/4 collectors there?
If I had to guess, I would say it's just a little over half would be 3 3/4.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the largest representations of 12-inch G.I. Joes that you can find anywhere. Bar none. I don't think I ever see any other convention advertise it so aggressively and really deliver.
Even regular Joe Fest is, I think there's probably less 12-inch at Joe Fest than there is. I'd almost guarantee there's less 12-inch at Joe Fest.
Yeah, I believe that. It's a dying art of collecting 12-inch Joes, I think, and as they have aged out a certain type of collector. So it is interesting to see it all there. But Jaren and I have developed enough of a rapport with enough dealers that consistently attend conventions in our area that we knew that there would be people there that we like to deal with that would basically be bringing the goods. And we weren't disappointed, as we'll get into here in just a little bit with the stuff that we picked up. Let's talk a little bit more about Winterfest before we get into the stuff that we picked up there. So, Jaren, now that you've seen both events that the Louisville area has to offer in terms of G.I. Joe conventions, do you prefer one over the other based on the experience?
Honestly, not. I don't really have too much of a preference. I will say it is nice having everything in one room, as much as that might sound weird. You don't have multiple rooms, so it's a lot easier to compare what you have. But there is a lot more options, which normally leads to better prices when you have multiple rooms. So it's kind of a give and take there. I think I enjoyed the crowd more at Winterfest because there's less people there. I feel like more of just the hardcore Joe people come to Winterfest, where I think because of the size, you get a few more vendors that are, a variety of toy lines, so you get a little more non-Joe people, whereas it's kind of like the hardcore group at Winterfest.
Yeah, I would say, speaking of crowd size, that especially if you factor in the attendees for the preview night and the early bird open, which is from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. that morning, I won't say bare, but was plenty of room to get around, get first dibs on stuff, see what was being offered for you to kind of shop through. Even honestly, when it opened up to the general public at 10 a.m., it was crowded there for a bit, but the crowds didn't last very long. So I was a little bit surprised to see that overall attendance on this one did seem lower than the previous year. I don't think that it was a failure as a show, based on what I saw. I think that the vendors that did well did very well, but I think it is worth noting that overall I felt like attendance was significantly lower than the previous year. And, maybe steps on the toes of my assumption that Winterfest is primed to expand. And maybe not. Maybe it's good just as it is. And I'm fine with that. I mean, we still have Kentuckiana to fall back on, which has, become a pretty big show considering that it's exclusively G.I. Joe focused. And that, one medium-sized show that's G.I. Joe focused is still better than any other convention that's opened up to any type of collecting. If I go to Lexington Comic-Con, I might find a handful of G.I. Joe vendors at best. So at least here I know that there's, a half a dozen or more dedicated people that are only selling G.I. Joe stuff. We'll compare, the results of this to Kentuckiana in the summer when it comes up and see if these events have the consistency to continue to draw in a crowd to be successful and hopefully maintain in this area. I do love both of these shows, and I go pretty hard in both of them because it's so rare to have a G.I. Joe event so close to us that I want to support it no matter what. I hope they do both continue. I certainly have adjusted to budgeting around an event like this coming up, twice yearly, and the expectations about, what I'm going to see and get there. It's nice, even if you don't really need anything, I still feel like it's fun to go to a show and see everybody and look around at, what is there, even if it's maybe not stuff that you're interested in. As a guy that doesn't actively collect 12-inch stuff, I still do really enjoy seeing a bunch of 12-inch stuff all on display because it's not something you see every day.
When I see 12-inch, I want 12-inch. I haven't fully jumped in. I've only got like 3 figures, but every time I go to Kentuckiana or Winterfest, it's like, maybe I should buy a few 12-inch, and then I spend all my money on 3 3/4 anyway, So
that's our overall feeling on the convention, just in terms of the attendance and, what we hope for and kind of how it shows up. If you watch this on our YouTube, we did take some video, so you can kind of see a little bit more of a handful of what people were offering at Winterfest this year. To get a better idea of the stuff that you can pick up at Winterfest, let's go ahead and dive right into recent acquisitions. And we'll talk a little bit about what Jaren and I got this year.
Recent acquisitions.
There's only a couple of things that I really wanted to dive into because I did buy a lot of little stuff. And in the interest of brevity, I don't want to bore the audience talking about all the small bips and bobs that I've picked up for my pieces. I will say this. For the first time in my collecting career, I'm really aggressively working on a parts list, which is, I think we could all agree, an essential part of building up your collection. I'm only just now kind of getting into a spot where my vehicles are really accessible, much less the fact that I can actually kind of go to a vehicle and see what's missing on it or, take it with me somewhere and compare it online. So I've been aggressively working on picking a few vehicles out or play sets and then making a note of, however much stuff I need for it so I can, shop on getting this stuff 100% complete as opposed to just giving up on it and buying a new one. And I also knew Greg, number 2 from Lost and Found Toys, a person that we've talked about in previous episodes, would be set up. And as someone that is not only my favorite retailer, has a great system in place for shopping for spare parts. If you didn't listen to our last episode, Greg basically has small plastic tubs, and on the outside they're labeled with the playsetter vehicle. And it's all the loose parts he has for that playsetter vehicle. So if you know within reason what you're looking for, there's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to find it with some ease. And so I guess brevity's already getting out of hand, but basically I did pick up a bunch of stuff for some vehicles that I had made note of. My mobile command center, I found multiple parts for it, and it's very close to being at 100%, something that I picked up at a Kentuckiana, within the last 2 years. So I'm trying to make steps in getting that stuff boosted up. I bought some stuff for my bug, even though we were just talking about this is a conversation for another time, but at what point should I give up on a restored vehicle and just start looking for a new one altogether? Because I've got some stuff that's got some brakes in it that essentially nullifies the completion of the entire vehicle. Like it might be a missile that's broken off on the shell. So I have to decide, do I glue this or make some other patch kit to it? Or do I just give up and try to find a brand new one? Anyway, so I bought a handful of stuff like that. Jaren, you bought some loose parts also. Do you want to go ahead and speak briefly on stuff that you picked up, what you're working on getting completed?
Yeah, so the only thing that popped into my mind, the biggest thing, I guess, was that I needed bug parts as well. I needed a couple missiles for my bug. So I went ahead and picked those up. And then I got a few of the large torpedoes for my moray because I had lost one in a creek adventure. So I went ahead and got a couple so that when I lose another one, I'll have an extra. Those are my parts. Which at this point, I need to just start. If I see missiles, I should just buy the missiles if they're at a good deal, which they always are with Greg Prime. He takes care of us. He's got a great system organized. You can see, he not only does he have the name of the vehicle, but he has the year, so you can make sure you're getting the correct one. It makes it really nice, and then he always cuts you a good deal. And he also had a Badger for me, so that was even better.
You're the go-to man for unlocking that trash. As soon as they see you now, they know they can just move one more out the door. So, is your bug 100% complete at this point now, or?
I'd have to take a really solid look at it and compare it to Yojo, but I believe it is. If not, it's 9. Well, okay. Let me say, it needs stickers, so no, it's not 100% complete. But other than stickers, I believe it is 100%.
Time to head on over to Toy Hacks, baby, and get you some repro stickers for it.
I am terrible with stickers. That is the one thing that I'm like even when I was opening the retro collection stuff, the first one I would open, I'd put the stickers on perfectly, and then the second one I'd put like half the stickers, and then the third one, like my Awe Strikers, if you look at them, it's like one is 100% done, one's like 75% done, and then the other ones are like maybe 10% done each.
It's extremely tedious. I've been working on organizing my file cards and paperwork in general lately, and it's crazy how many file cards I'll pull up that have the included sticker sheet still in the package, where I just was like, I'm not going to sticker this at all. So I've got stuff from like 2008, which maybe still doesn't seem crazy old, but is ridiculous for me to be pulling out sticker sheets going, oh yeah, I didn't ever tag this flat cannon when they released it in the modern line. I need to do a repro sticker set on my bug also. I was surprised, just like my mobile command center, I was actually surprised at how close I am getting to actually being at 100%. My bug has only got about 3 things on it that need to be replaced, not including the fact that it does have 2 brakes in it that basically, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've almost completed it, and I'm still not sure if I'm happy with it in the condition that it's in. But I guess that's a battle for another day as I continue to buy parts for it. And I guess until I found one at a good price, this is the next best thing. I find a lot of stuff in my collection has been breaking, not of its own accord, but is like just damage that I don't see coming. I broke an entire axle off of a Rolling Thunder late last year, and I was able to glue it back on, but immediately I'm like, well, now it's broken still. So I'm struggling with a lot of that stuff right now. I'm trying to figure out, if I should start looking for a new shell or whatever. Anyway, I continue to build these pieces up at the same time while simultaneously thinking of replacing them. So we got a bunch of loose parts, but was only able to jot down like maybe 5 or 6 vehicles that I was really aggressively working on, as the list is far from complete. Is just something that I literally just started on. So I'll start with some of my smaller vehicles first, and then Jaren, I'll let you chime in with some stuff you got as well. On the smaller vehicle side of things, I only picked up a couple of little cheapy guys. I bought another Triple T. This is my third Triple T because I have now broken 2 of them. If you remember, I bought one maybe at the first Kentuckiana that I attended, and it turned out to have a little bit of like burned plastic on the side that I missed. Well, I got a second Triple T in this lot from this gentleman that I bought a couple episodes ago. You might remember the other epic haul. I picked up all this guy's vehicles that had a Triple T in it. Okay, so it wasn't melted, but had the control stick was broken off of it, which is something that's pretty common. I thought, well, I'll take these 2 shells apart and merge them and have a complete one. Well, what I actually did was I broke the tab off the back of both of them in the exact same spot. So neither one of them, they were both basically broken now regardless. So they had a Triple T there. Todd Henderson, our good friend from Destro's Toy Den, he had a Triple T for $25. I was just like, good, I'll just get rid of these, strip them down, put them on eBay or something. Just good riddance. So I bought finally a complete Triple T undamaged. My last one for sure, hopefully. I also picked up a Eliminator from Todd, which is the 1987 Battle Force 2000 vehicle. I've been slowly shopping Battle Force 2000 stuff for quite a while now, at least a year, because I picked up a pulverizer last year as it was a super cheap edition. There are, not including the pulverizer, there are 6 total vehicles in the Battle Force 2000 set. And now that's 1, so 5 more to go. I look at them a lot because they turn up a lot. They're very common vehicles and they're very cheap vehicles. But most of these vehicles, like 5 out of 6 of them, are white or off-white. And it seems like every time I find one, they're yellow just a little bit too much. I almost picked up a Vector Jet, but it was just a little. It had seen a little bit too much sunlight. So anyway, I knocked one of those off. My long-term goal is to finally acquire the rest of the Battle Force 2000, a very cheap pickup. I wouldn't even hate to have a second set that was just Future Fortress, which is the base that these vehicles kind of Voltron-like combine into. But I guess that's something a little bit further down the line. So I picked both of those up, and that's probably the only 2 actually really small vehicles that I picked up. I didn't buy a whole lot because I had prearranged a much larger purchase, which I'll get to in just a minute. But most of my money did go towards bigger budget stuff. So what about you, Jaren? Tell me about some of the smaller stuff that you picked up.
So I got a Starfighter, the little jet from Star Brigade. Mm-hmm. Just kind of continuing on my Star Brigade hunt. There's very minimal stuff from Star Brigade, so that'll probably honestly be the first sub team that I complete. Maybe just depends on if I can get a Gears. That'll be the deciding factor, which is, you obviously know that was the last figure you had, right? Or one of the last few figures you needed.
Yeah, is there a specific reason you want Gears?
I just want the whole set.
Oh, we're talking about the little robot fighter?
Yeah, Gears with his little robot dude.
Yeah, Gears was the last dude that I picked up. He was very hard to find.
Yeah, so he's going to be the one that holds me up. But so just trying to complete Star Brigade. It's not something honestly that I've seen a lot at cons. Like I don't remember seeing any at Joe Fest, which I could have just easily missed them. But they don't seem to be super common. Maybe because people don't want to waste their space that they have with Star Brigade stuff. But it seems like they're kind of making a come up, at least on eBay. The prices are going up, which sucks. But so that was the one. I picked up a Zap to continue my original 13. It's a 1.5 swivel arm with he has both of his thumbs completely intact, and his bazooka is intact, which was key to me.
How much was that? Do you remember?
I got it and a complete topside for $75.
That's a steal. I think if I remembering correctly, he had that Zap priced at $60, which, if you are familiar with Zaps with unbroken thumbs, that's a great deal. And he had his bazooka, so definitely one of the harder, maybe the hardest OG-13 to pick up, really, out of the lot.
Yeah, that guy that we bought the Zap from, his prices were great. I love dealing with him.
Yeah, speaking of, since we're talking about figures, I also picked up some figures from this dude. This guy just had a bunch of stuff organized by year. Every figure was like in its own little thing, and it seems like most of them were complete or pretty close to complete. His prices were so good. I picked up a Zorana because I have the variant Zorana with the earrings, but she has there's the only nice way to say it is she has wear on her torso in a very uncomfortable way. Then I had been looking to replace that for a while, so I picked up a Zorana. It's extremely clean. And
you don't want a Zorana on display that looks like you've been playing with it too much in a certain way.
There's just a lot of rub in a very specific area. It's really awkward. My Xandar had broken in the move, even though he was in like a tackle box case. His rubber band had snapped, and instead of like going through the effort of doing a repair work on him, because all of Zartan's brethren are glued shut at the torso, it requires a little bit more effort to pop them apart in this situation. And it can be done. It's not a difficult surgery, but he had one for like $20 that was complete. And so I was like, I'm just going to buy one. And again, it looks very good. It's much better looking than the existing one I had. when I swapped those Zoranas out, I actually were able to pop both of the torsos open just by twisting the head in the joint and using that pressure to push the. I mean, it was extremely simple. That glue, I guess, has been weathered quite a bit over the years. And then he had a Serpentor, which I actually only picked up because it was such a good deal. It was a Serpentor that was completely unbroken, with his dagger. Doesn't have his cape, and his little Cobra hood. The peg for it is broken, but it was only $25, and I paid almost $25 just for that dagger. So I thought, I'm gonna get this, and I'm either gonna resell it, trade it, or put it on display somewhere because you just don't see a Serpentor very cheap. Those are the only figures I bought because I don't typically need figures, but that dude did have some great pricing. Knocked everything down that we bought a little bit. Like, he was very open to negotiation on that stuff. So, anything else that falls into that small to mid range before we move on?
I guess a Sea Ray with the Sea Slug.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's small to mid. I think that's such a fun little vehicle, so I picked one of those up.
Great vehicle. I mentioned this when you bought it, but it's probably most notoriously known for being the first boss in the G.I. Joe Nintendo video game. But I had this vehicle as a kid and really liked it quite a bit. Its versatility in the air and the water, and the way it detaches, it makes it a very fluid vehicle. Like, it's has a lot of use out in the playground, so to speak. So yeah, I think that's not a very expensive vehicle either. So I think that's a solid pickup. Before I move on to our mid-range stuff, I did also pick up 3 Cobra Law guards. There was a dude there that had them for $12 a pop. They were incomplete. It was just a figure. I have been troop building Cobra Law guards a lot, it seems like, over the last little bit. One, because it's a very cheap piece to troop build. 2, because there's no modern equivalent of the Royal Guard. It's other than Globulus. It's one of the only things that didn't make the move over. And 3, it's Cobra Law, regardless of how you feel about it, is a pretty underdeveloped faction. And I like every faction to have some representation on the battlefield. So, for example, Destro has the Iron Grenadiers. I like to own, a pretty good assortment of Iron Grenadiers because, Destro maybe only has 10 troops for the battleground. So I like to be able to bolster those numbers with the one troop that's dependable in situations like that. And I think that's what's happening with the Cobra Law Guard, is just that I'd like to have a whole bunch of them because there are no other infantry for Cobra Law. Okay, so moving on to mid-range stuff. The very first thing that I saw there, and I had put it on hold and told him to sit on it for a day and I would pick it up when we came back, was the Ghost Striker X16. The Ghost Striker X16 is a vehicle that I had seen recently, but wasn't really familiar with. It was released in 1993 as part of Series 12. It's a little boxed jet. It has a handle that flips down, and when you have batteries in it, when you flip the handle down, it starts making flying sounds, essentially. And then if you would press the trigger, it would make kind of like a Captain Power-esque thing. It would project a symbol onto the wall, and it looks like you're locking on a target and you're firing on it, blah, 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 blah. This vehicle is either seen a resurgence or maybe has always been rare because, again, it's just something that came in so late in the line, I'm not really familiar with it. I had never really seen it before. And they had 2 of them there. One of them was for $100, and then Greg number 2 had this one for $85. And so I started checking it out and was talking to him about it, and it was complete. And I, of course, asked him, hey, do the lights and the sounds work? He says, I think so, but it doesn't have batteries in it. If you get it and it doesn't, let me know and I'll make it right. But I try not to sweat that stuff too much. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to start looking for another one. As long as it's complete, I'm good. So, and he knocked off like $10 because the Ace figure that it came with it was the right body, but it had a different head. Which, as you know, I have a complete figure collection of some sort, so I knew already that this figure was already waiting for me somewhere in my collection of figures. So I wasn't sweating that. So I picked this up because I had been seeing it a lot. I felt like the price on it was climbing. And it's a great vehicle. I mean, it's a very simple white jet. If you take the sound assortment part of it out, it's very functional. And I like that it has a little fold down handle basically for it, so you can kind of fly it and pilot it on your own. So that was technically, even though I didn't pay for it right then, was one of the very first things I picked up and was like, I want this. I keep seeing it. And and I need it. So that was one of my bigger pickups. Also in the mid-range vehicle, and I didn't get a lot of this stuff, but on almost as we were leaving and done, I mean, I must have walked the floor a dozen times or more, but I missed this somehow. In the corner of this shop, this guy had an Avalanche. Now, if you're not familiar with the Avalanche, it was released in 1990, and it's like a big rectangular tank. It has a big mine thrower that it shoots mines out of on one side, has a big gun that pivots down on the other. The back center part's this huge, like, detachable hovercraft type vehicle that comes apart. I had the Avalanche as a kid, and it always kind of had a special place in my heart because I didn't exclusively use it for snow stuff because it was so, like, body of a tank, essentially. So I felt like it was pretty actually useful. And in terms of size, you could just layer it with Joes. You could lay them all over this thing. So this guy had the Avalanche for $65. It did come with cold front, the pilot, and he had his gun. He just didn't have his mic. That's a pretty good price if you're familiar with the Avalanche at all. So certainly because of the shipping on it, it would have been almost certainly more than that in this condition. I saw a dude there selling a cold front. Now, he did have his microphone, admittedly, but the same guy that I was just praising for his great prices had a complete gold front for $100. So I knew it was a pretty solid deal. And I had been looking at Avalanches not that long ago. Again, it's something that I had as a kid. It always kind of captures my eye. And it's a bigger vehicle. I always have my eye on that stuff. So I bought that pretty much without... Actually, I think I talked him down $5. And then I bought it without hesitation. It was missing one missile, the spring-loaded missile. And as I was telling Jaren before we started recording, as I looked through my large assortment of spare parts, probably because I owned this as a kid, I was able to find that one missing missile for it, which is extremely gratifying. I'm sure most of you can relate to that. So I picked up the Avalanche. I'm really happy with it, and it's complete and basically done. My cold front didn't have that gun, so I also got to add an accessory into my collection as well. Probably get a repro mic for this guy, though. I can't be bothered to track down some super expensive small accessory. Those are pretty much my middle class vehicles. I've only got a couple other things that I picked up other than that. Jaren, what's in your like mid range?
I would say the one, and it was similar to your Avalanche, where it was like the last thing I bought. Well, actually, technically, the two last things I bought, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about.
Okay.
Was the VTOL. I got the Hurricane VTOL. I'd been eyeing that one since last Winterfest, and I think it's actually the same one. They just dropped their price to a number I was more comfortable with. And it's not complete. It's missing 2 missiles and 1 piece on the underneath, but it's a piece underneath I'll never fix because I don't care. It's tucked away, and it's not something I'm going to see. If they hadn't pointed it out, I never would have known that it was missing. It's like the little cover for the mechanism that moves. And, I mean, I appreciate them, letting me know, hey, it's not complete, which helps me with the price. But, I don't care. Now I need 2 missiles for it. But I just think that vehicle's so cool. I love the being able to take off vertically and then fly regularly. And then it was in one of the newer comics that I just read, maybe a few issues back. And it was pretty cool. I enjoyed that vehicle. So that was the second to last thing that I bought. And then I'd been given Todd, me and him have been going back and forth about this Hammerhead, the whole Saturday. We hadn't talked about it on Friday, but on Saturday I was giving him a hard time on it. And finally, he worked it out to where it was good a deal for me. And so I picked up a Hammerhead as well.
Those are both like A+ vehicles. I would chalk both of these vehicles up as vehicles that get underestimated a lot, I feel like. I personally have been talking about a Hurricane for quite a while. I didn't realize how expensive it was. It's such a great piece to come out. So it also came out in 1990, so it's a while to go. Here's the Avalanche, a gigantic ice tank that shoots mines. And that came out the same year as this beautiful, sleek-looking vertical takeoff and landing jet, which has no goofy mechanisms, no outrageous paint scheme. It's blue and gray. It has a totally practical effect. It's almost a completely different world. I love it, and I do want one very badly. So I am jealous of that. That Hammerhead's the same way. The Hammerhead has some unusual gimmickry to it, but it's still just a great piece with a great color scheme, displays well, has a lot of cool stuff going for it. Okay, so the only other thing I picked up before we start talking about the big stuff is I did pick up two Joy Toy diorama sets because that's something I've been working on. I found a Mecha Depot and I found it's like a maintenance bay for gigantic mechs. This dude had them at basically just standard retail price, and I was kind of twiddling my thumbs at the end of the show, so I ended up pulling the trigger on both of those. I put them both together, and I love them. Joy Toy sets are really becoming a thing for me. I think they make really great diorama, base building stuff. It all integrates into itself really well. Okay, so I want to talk about the two big things that I picked up. Pre-show, I had reached out to Todd at Destro's Toy Den, and I asked him about something that he had posted recently and got in that I knew he probably still had based on the size. We worked out a deal beforehand where he said, yes, I could bring it, and this is how much it is. And so I'm pleased to tell you that after talking about it off and on for about a year, I finally landed a General. The General is the largest vehicle set that was remaining that I didn't have. I oftentimes get swept up under the trifecta of, the Terradrome, the Defiant, the Flag, the biggest and most amazing playsets. But I think, immediately enter a sub-tier that gets overlooked a little bit too much, which is Mobile Command Center, the General. I would also put the Pit rolling base that came out with the Rise of Cobra movie, because that's another exceptionally large playset. Those I think all kind of live under their own little umbrella. They get overlooked because they're not the heavy hitters, but they're still massive sets. The General is a beast. Was also released in 1990. Big year for 1990 at Winterfest II. If you're not familiar with the General, it's just like, it's hard to explain. It's a gigantic horizontal rolling tank with dozens of wheels on it. It has a gigantic landing pad on top. It comes with a small helicopter that takes off from it. The landing strip on top of it folds up, and there's a huge mortar that's tucked within the General. There's lots of stuff happening like underneath inside the base where people can man computers and missile launchers that rotate out, and it's insane. There is no way I could have had this shipped and expected it to survive at any point. And I'm sure that I've seen the General before, but until you personally are trying to figure out how to carry it inside your house, you do underestimate the size of it. And it's a beauty. Like, this probably knocks down everything in the weight class that I was looking for prior. It's probably the last truly large vehicle thing that was still out there. And I got a pretty good deal on it. I paid $250 for this. It is 100% complete. It does have one small break on one of the hinges of the landing pad. Doesn't affect it, its operational ability of it. It was extremely clean. I'll also say that. It looked really, really good. I'm extremely happy with it. Do the lights and the sounds work? Well, he didn't know. Now, if you've heard my spiel on this before, you know that I have often said, if somebody tells you it's untested, it doesn't work. Well, I'm here to tell you that both of the electronic toys I bought at Winterfest, I insert batteries into them both, and they both worked. The General does light up, and it does make sounds, which is awesome. And also that Ghost Striker I picked up that we were unclear on does light up, does play sounds, does project the little holographic target that you're fighting at. Pretty big win. That doesn't happen a lot. Typically, if you have something that has electronic parts, you advertise it as working because it does make a big deal in the price point of an item. So, anyway, I had set this up beforehand. I knew if I only got one thing and it was this, I would be happy, and I am. It's a beauty. If you've never had a General or never really seen one up close, I encourage you to try to get your hands on one and mess around with it, because it's very, very cool. To come out as late in the line as it did, it's a real winner. Why don't you tell me about one of your big pickups before, and then, because we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about this last thing I got.
All right. Well, first, before I do my big one, my non-Joe pickups, I did get a few Power of the Force things just because that's how I roll. I had to mention it. You mentioned Joy Toy, which is actually a good thing. I had to mention a bad thing, which is Power of the Force 2.
All right.
So I got a couple of those, and I picked up a Star Wars hot toy as well, which is something that had been on my list. And the guys at the Marauders, it's Indiana Marauders. Those guys are really cool, and so I got that. That was my non-Joe pickups. But my big pickup, and it's something that it seems like it's starting to happen at every show, is we work something out with Todd ahead of time. So before the show, I got with Todd and saw that he had posted that he had a complete whale, and that is like my favorite design of a vehicle. I love that. I love the naval aspect, which is why I've lost pieces of my moray in the creek. If you don't want to know, stop listening right now for like 3 seconds. I will put this in a creek. So now that you're listening again, I just think the whale's such a cool design. I bought it, or I picked it up from Todd on the Friday night preview. Didn't get home till almost, after 1 o'clock, and had built it that night, and played with it for a little bit, and it was awesome. I mean, I love this vehicle. Definitely one of my top 3 vehicles behind the Badger and Vamp. It is just it's such a cool vehicle. A lot of really unique design elements, like with the bike tucking in the very back, your little depth charges on the side, the sled that shoots out the front. It's such a well designed vehicle. I really love it. And then I got Cutter to go with it as well.
Yeah, I said this multiple times when you were eyeballing it and considering it, because it was obviously a substantial purchase. But if somebody said to me, "Hey man, my favorite vehicle is the Whale," out of all vehicles, that's not a surprising statement. The Whale is a A+++ tier vehicle and is understandably a lot of people's favorites. The Whale is definitely way up there for me. Easily breaks my top 5. Is a vehicle I had as a kid that I loved. Is a vehicle that I'm still working on as an adult that I love. So yeah, no regrets there, my friend. The Whale is one of the peak vehicle designs from the entire G.I. Joe universe, and I think you're going to get a lot of great shots out of it. It does have a lot cooking. I talk about all the stuff that the General has buried, but the Whale can instantly be like pop, and a little motorcycle can pop out of it. It's a great vehicle, and I'm happy that you bought it. In terms of big purchases, I can't think of anything better. And ironically, you gave me a Whale box, and now you have once again acquired another Whale box.
Yeah.
Did you pick up anything else before we get into the last part of this?
If I did, I did not remember what it was.
Okay. So let me talk a little bit about this last thing that I picked up, because it's a little bit complicated, I guess. So I was passing by several booths. I basically was looking at everything I had, and there's a guy there that does 3D parts, and he had a small glass case of con exclusive and rarities.
And that's right up your alley.
Amongst these things, something catches my eye, and it is the original Sightline figure, which you may have seen if you follow us on Twitter. I posted a picture of it. So spoiler, I did buy it. So if you're not familiar with this Sightline figure, a little bit of backstory on it is, in 2017, the G.I. Joe Declassified guys wanted to make a figure that as a tribute to their good friend Gary. We know him as Gary Goggles, who was a very active member of the community, was an extremely knowledgeable guy about G.I. Joe, was very friendly and very outgoing with that knowledge, learned a lot and shared a lot with a lot of the people in the community. He unfortunately passed away, and so they decided to make this figure as a tribute to him. They licensed Red Laser, who's a Black Matrix person that creates his own, molds his own parts, makes kind of new takes on them. They created a figure of 1,000 pieces, and they gave him the codename Sightline with the real name Gary Goggles. And you had to basically be at the JoeCon that year. 2017 was in Florida, and you got him for free. With the request that they would limit it to one per person. They just asked in memory of Gary don't resell this figure. There'll be plenty of ways to get it if you don't, which doesn't turn out to be 100% true, and we'll get into that. So I've wanted this figure for a long time. It has been very hard to acquire because a lot of people, I mean, you still see it quite a bit, but it doesn't pop up for sale very often because most people are trying to honor that request. When you do see it pop up, it's pretty expensive. It's at least $100, but I've seen them go for over 200. So I'm obviously, first of all, surprised to see that here. And second of all, it doesn't have a price on it. So I talked to this guy. I'm like, hey, how much is this? And he approaches me and is in an immediate defensive stance. It's basically like, oh, you know what this is, right? It's the $1 million question. Most people, would give me a hard time just for having it out for sale, blah, 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 blah. This guy knows he shouldn't be selling this figure, that it's been deemed in poor taste to sell a figure that was given away for free. And I'm going to dive into I want to talk a little bit with you about that, Jaren, about the ins and outs of this particular situation. So to cut to the chase, this guy knows he shouldn't be selling it. He wants $125 for it, which is a lot for a free figure, but is less than what I've seen it go for online. It is less than what I have bid for one online at a certain point. So I obviously bought it, as I already said. I've wanted it very badly, and I have wanted it for quite a while. I'm not going to find a free one. I don't go to enough conventions. My travel schedule isn't open enough to even have to even remember that I should be looking for it in the 1% chance that one of them pops up out there. So I bought it. Here's my question: is it wrong to sell this figure, first of all? And am I at fault for supporting it by buying it? So I'm not going to put this guy on blast. I'm not going to tell you who he is. It is a vendor that I don't particularly care for because I do feel like he is only in it for the money. And I guess if you're a vendor, dadoy, that's your whole job. But there's a difference between a vendor dealing with vendors that are doing it as a side hustle, but are also just genuinely good guys and also enjoy doing it. They like having the interactions with their customers. They like going to the shows. I mean, this guy doesn't come off like that. This guy just wants your dollars. And also, it would be unfair for me to put this guy on blast when I've been in a dubious situation where I could get money, and I've been given promotional stuff that I probably am not technically supposed to sell that I would sell, or I've bought a rare Funko Pop to flip it. So it's a gray area, but I'm interested in hearing what your thought is on somebody selling something like this that was made and then specifically requested to not resell. What's your take on this whole situation?
I feel like it's such a tough situation. It's unique because it is a figure that the masses will not have. It's just in that from the design, right? It's at a con, it's exclusive, it's limited in the amount of pieces, so immediately that makes it hard for people to get. So I don't necessarily think it is wrong to sell it. It might be in, I guess, poor taste just because of the origins of the figure, if that makes sense. But then again, there are collectors like you who absolutely really want one. I mean, you are trying to complete, all the vintage figures, and this is adjacent to that. It's not a completely official release. It's in that kind of secondary area where it's a con exclusive, but it wasn't, whatever. But it's such a tough situation because I've been in scenarios where I'm like, I have to have this figure and I know what that's like, and it can be frustrating. I think maybe it would be. I think it's better to sell it at something like this than online. I would say, is the biggest thing. I think this is better than selling it on eBay. Because then you're getting it to people who want it, people who are actually desiring it. And it's still being passed through at cons as opposed to just sold on eBay to whoever.
Yeah, this is something that even after we're almost a full week away from it now, I still am kind of struggling with it. want to be a part. Well, I mean, I am a part of this community and have been for a long time. And I want to, maybe play by the rules is the wrong terminology, but I want to be supportive of the people that are supportive of the community. So if they say don't sell it, I would, if I came into one, I would hold that line. The idea is if you have one and you don't want it, you should just freely, because it didn't cost you anything, get it into the hands of another collector and not make a quick buck on it. But I know the reality of that is limited. There are lots and lots of people in the G.I. Joe community that would, see a chance to make a quick buck and they do it. And these are the same people that, are stalking out your local Targets and Walmarts and scooping everything up and reselling it. It's just part of how it is. But you can't tell me, a hardcore enthusiast collector, you can't be like, hey, we made this limited run figure. It's a deeply personal part of, of our community, and it represents a person that we had tremendous love in our heart for. So whatever you do, if you don't get one for free, you can never have one. That might immediately, I'm like, it's just like seeing you pick up something at a convention that I don't have. I'm like, I really gotta have this in my collection. That's just how the fire is for a collector. You want the really rare stuff as well because it's a prize in your collection, so to speak. So anyway, this figure's been on my mind for a long time and is one of the only times I've ever seen it in person. And I had the income at the time to make a educated decision on it, and I did, and I love it. If you saw my picture, I already have it I bought a case from Encased Collectibles to put it on display, thinking ahead to where in my collection would I put this piece that I'm really proud of to kind of show off a little bit. I would be interested in hearing what the community's thoughts on this. If it should just be, if you can't get it for free, don't get it. Or if it's okay to buy it and sell it and you just have to accept that that's kind of part of it is. If you have thoughts on that, you could hit us up on any of our socials. We're on anything Joe's Pod at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can email us directly to anythingjoespod@gmail.com. I'd love to have some back and forth, respectful. I see both sides of this equation, so I'm just interested in what the public in general thinks about it. And that's going to do it for us today. Jaren, do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up?
So I think the only thing I have really to say in ending is Winterfest is great. Not only that it is a G.I. Joe show that is literally like 15 minutes or less from your house, but it's a time that we get to hang out with other people in the Joe community. It's always such a cool time to go to the Friday night opening and get to chill and talk with guys from Order of Battle, Podcast from the Pit, and some of the other really cool guys. I mean, I got to meet a few new people this year and just hang out, chill, grab a bite to eat or do whatever. And I think that is even... To me, it's even cooler than just the convention is getting to hang out with these people that, you talk to here and there online, but getting to actually put a face and name and, really get to hang out and kind of dig in a little deeper and really kind of learn what makes each other tick and why we do these, why we collect and why we do these things, why we put stuff out into the community, why we want to create podcasts or other content about things that we enjoy. So that's always the funnest part, getting to interact with vendors and other podcasts or just other fellow fans of G.I. Joe. So that's the best part of Winterfest and Kentuckiana.
Yeah, I can count on one hand how many times I'm able to be in a room with people that are all similarly minded in their collection. They all are here for G.I. Joe. That's like a dream come true for somebody like me who wants to 100% talk about G.I. Joe and has had to socially remind himself that the average person that you encounter or work with doesn't care about the general that you picked up over the weekend. So being in a room with people that we get along with and have the same interest in it, as you're right, it's a very valuable experience. It's something that I've looked forward to every year, and I'm grateful that Winterfest gives us a chance to make that twice a year because they are friendships that I value, people that I do really enjoy chatting with. Even if it is only for those 2 times, it's it makes it an occasion and something to look forward to. We'll continue to go to Winterfest and Kentuckiana every year, and we'll monitor it year to year to see, is it getting bigger? Does it really have the potential to expand? I certainly hope so. Okay, so that's going to do it for us today. I wanted to thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening today. If you have anything for us, please hit us up on our social media or email us at anythingjoespodcast@gmail.com or anythingjoespod@gmail.com. And we look forward to talking to you in just 2 short weeks. We'll be back with the conclusion of the G.I. Joe Origins Declassified story arc. This is the culmination of the secret origin of Shooter, as well as a look into what the original 13 Joes were doing just prior to the formation of the G.I. Joe team. We hope you'll join us in 2 short weeks for that, and we'll see you then, because anything's available for discussion here on Anything Joes.